I've been learning languages a really long time, and most of that time has been completely alone without anybody to talk to with more experience than me. That means that I had to make a lot of mistakes because I had nobody to tell me otherwise. Let's talk about things to know before learning a new language, things that I wish somebody had told me. The first thing to know before learning a new language is to stop following other people's strategies. Hanging out on YouTube, there are no limits to how many language learning strategies that you can find. Everybody has something else to say, and everybody is touting their own experience and their own personal journeys as the best way to learn a language. What you don't see is you don't see the people who are like I was, who was just going through all these strategies, trying to figure out which one worked, and spoiler alert, none of them worked for me. I would follow the most exciting, most crystal clear, tangible language learning strategies, and they wouldn't work. I would just burn out. For example, if you've ever heard of Fluent in 3 months, I tried to follow that strategy to a T, and I burnt out like 7 or 8 times in those 3 months. If you're not familiar, it's basically where you just throw yourself into the language and have as many conversations and make as many mistakes as you can and do nothing else but learn a language for 3 months until you reach a really advanced level, which sounds really great in theory, but in reality, it's incredibly intensive and it requires 100% of your time. You don't have time for a job, hobbies, self-care, friends, anything like that. Because if you want to achieve this, you are living and breathing the language, which I personally am not capable of. Even if I don't have anything going on for 3 months, if I were to sit here alone with no expectations, no responsibilities for 3 months, I still would not be able to do it because it's not enjoyable for me. Only after trying Fluent in 3 months and 30-day language challenges and all these other language challenges, there are plenty that you can find. Only after years of trying and failing to do those did I realize that I need to not try to learn languages intensively. I do not function like that. The thing that will actually help in this situation is understanding what language learning strategy works for you, and that is why I now have the method to help my clients do exactly that. The next thing to know before learning a new language is to stop trying to be fluent. That is such an attractive, exciting word, but it really, really holds so many language learners back. I try to avoid using the word fluent as much as possible just because it doesn't really mean anything specific. So when I talk about language learning and I communicate all these different strategies, I try to avoid using the word fluent because I want to communicate clearly what you should expect from different language learning strategies, whether that be being able to have conversations confidently, having perfect grammar, being able to read books, being able to understand television shows, things like that. Those are much more specific phrases and more productive phrases to use than getting fluent. Focusing on getting fluent also means that you're focusing on the end result and not the journey. What does this mean? This means that every time you sit down to study the language, you're thinking about where you're going to be in the future, which is fine, except it's not like you commit to studying every single day. All of a sudden, you're going to wake up one day and all of your wildest language learning dreams have come true and you are completely whatever it is that you want to be in the language. I know people love to talk their big, dramatic transformations in their language learning, but it's not realistic. Actual language learning is not that dramatic. It's not that exciting long term. And this is what makes a lot of language learners give up because it doesn't stay exciting. This is why I talk about making sure that you're enjoying the language all the time. Because if you don't actually enjoy the process, you're not going to get to the end result. And if you don't know what those building blocks look like from where you are right now to your eventual goal, you're not going to be able to see the progress that you're making because it's so minute, it's so tiny. You're not going to see it unless you know what it is that you're looking for. And that is why phase 1 of the method is all about creating your journey and what all those little short-term goals are going to look like and what it's going to look like when you're making that progress. I had tried to force myself to go to the language exchanges, to use the apps that I didn't like, to learn from language teachers that I was really not jiving well with. I really, really tried to stay committed and stay motivated, even though I hated the strategy that I was using, even though I hated the day-to-day of using the language. I tried to commit to it because how else are you going to learn a language, right? I had to learn the hard way that you can actually enjoy the language, and you should enjoy the language. If you don't actually enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to get there. If you're so focused on that fluency, it's like watching paint dry. You're going to be staring at it and staring at it and staring at it, and it's never going to happen. But if you focus on the language itself and actually enjoy it while you're there, eventually you're going to look at it and be like, oh wow, the paint is dry. Amazing. It would be kind of like a surprise, honestly. A really nice surprise. The next thing to know before learning a new language is that you're gonna suck at it. You're gonna suck at it a lot, and it's gonna be uncomfortable. Perfection is just not realistic. Actually, not only is it realistic, but if you're gonna try to be perfect, you're gonna be so exhausted by every single little mistake that you make and everything that you do wrong that you're gonna give up. Thing is, though, that nobody is perfect. Like, not even native speakers. Native speakers of any language make mistakes constantly, all the time, and they don't even notice it. You make mistakes in your native language every single day without being aware of it. And the reason why you're not aware of it is because you're not insecure about your abilities in your native language. So you're not waiting for every little mistake to be made, and then every time you make a mistake, you like freak out about it. It gets to the point where you're so worried and so stressed out about potentially making a mistake that you don't have the energy to even try anymore. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you end up not practicing at all. And so the few times that you can get yourself to practice the language, it's full of mistakes you haven't learned yet. And that just makes you feel bad. I wish that somebody had told me that I will make mistakes and that mistakes are not only inevitable, but a good thing. Mistakes are opportunities to learn. They're not a negative thing. They're not something that I should feel guilty about or afraid of doing. Because saying the wrong thing or saying it in the wrong way is infinitely better than not saying it at all. The next thing to know before learning a new language is to not worry so much about how much information you know and focus on what information you can use. What does that mean? It is very safe and comforting to memorize translations, memorize conjugations, and count how many words you can memorize. It is much more scary to try to use those words and use those conjugations. And in reality, you'll find that no matter how many words you know theoretically, like you have in your brain, you're not going to use most of them. There can be millions of words in a language, but you're only going to use like a couple thousand of them. Plus, you can memorize and translate all the words that you want, but that's only one part of having an actual conversation. The other part is actually being able to use those words, which is a completely different skill. And you know this to be true if you try and have conversations, but you spend all of your time translating the words from English or from your native language. Unless you want to be a translator, unless that's your goal, it's really not necessary and it's a waste of time and energy. But if you learn vocabulary and conjugations to translate, that's what you're teaching your brain to do. You're not teaching your brain to use them. It's an entirely different skill. Most of us are not taught to learn to use vocabulary, learn to use words, learn to communicate and express ourselves in the target language. But if that's what you want to do, you need to learn to build that skill. It's scary and it's difficult at first, but it is absolutely possible. And the last thing that I wish I knew before I started learning languages is that I can do it. Honestly, I spent a lot of years with this idea in my brain that it wasn't actually possible for me to learn a language just because I had proven again and again that it was not possible, that all the other strategies that worked for everybody else, that all the expectations that I had, those weren't working for me, so I assumed it was something that was wrong with me. And it was a completely logical thought. I had tried for all of these years, tried using all these strategies, and none of them worked. So it must be something wrong with me, right? It wasn't something that was wrong with me. It was something that was wrong with how language learning is portrayed online. That if you buy this course, if you buy this book, if you listen to this person who has experience learning all of these languages, then inevitably you'll have the success that they have. And that's just not true. I wish I could tell my past self to stop listening to everybody on the internet who is just trying to sell their course, sell their app, sell their flashcards, whatever it is, just because they have learned 27 different languages. And instead start focusing on the actual language and how much I genuinely enjoy language learning when I'm less focused on the fluency and what everybody else is doing, and instead get focused on myself and the language. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. If you found it valuable, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new video every single Wednesday. And if you want to get started creating your own language learning strategy and not just following somebody else's, make sure to take the free quiz linked down below. See you there.